I'm a 27-year-old woman, and this story is about how my relationship with my dad fell apart over the years, starting from when I was a kid. Growing up, I was really close to my dad. My parents divorced when I was 8, and I lived primarily with my mom. But weekends with my dad were the highlight of my week. We'd go hiking, work on little projects around his house, and he'd always remind me how proud he was of me. That's why what happened later hurt so much. Things started to change when I was 13. My dad started dating Julia, who had 2 kids from her previous marriage, Lucas and Lily. Lucas was 12, and Lily was 10 at the time. At first, I was excited because I thought I'd have more people to hang out with. But when they moved in, everything shifted. Julia decided to quit her job to focus on Lucas and Lily. My dad, who already worked long hours, had to take on even more overtime to make up for the loss of income. This meant he was around less, and when he was home, most of his attention was on making Julia and her kids feel comfortable. I tried to adjust, but it became obvious pretty quickly that I wasn't part of their little unit. Family dinners were always about what Lucas and Lily had going on. Lucas played soccer, and Lily was into cheerleading. My own accomplishments, like making the honor roll or winning a writing contest, barely got a nod. Vacations were planned around their schedules, and I started feeling like an afterthought. I remember one summer when I wanted to visit my grandparents, but Julia insisted we take a trip to the beach because Lucas had never seen the ocean. I guess whose plans got canceled? High school was when things went from bad to worse. My dad had promised me a college fund, something he'd been saving for since I was little. It wasn't going to cover everything, but it was supposed to help a lot. Then, during my junior year, my mom told me that fund had been used to pay for Lucas's private school tuition. Apparently, Lucas had some trouble adjusting to public school, and Julia had convinced my dad that he needed a better environment. I didn't hear about this from my dad, by the way. My mom was the one who broke the news. When I confronted my dad, he said Lucas needed it more and assured me we'd figure something out for my college. But that never happened. My mom ended up taking out loans to help me, while my dad barely contributed, claiming he was tight on money. It was around this time that my dad missed my high school graduation. Lily had a cheerleading competition the same day, and Julia convinced him that Lily's event was more important because her whole team was depending on her. I remember sitting in the auditorium, looking out at the crowd, and not seeing him there. He didn't even call until the next day, and when he did, he acted like it wasn't a big deal. By the time I went to college, I'd stopped visiting my dad's house regularly. Every time I went over, it felt like I was intruding. Julia would make these passive-aggressive comments about how I was so busy that I didn't have time for family. Dinners were always centered around Lucas and Lily's lives, and any attempts I made to talk about my own experiences were brushed aside. Once, I mentioned struggling with a tough class, and Julia responded by talking about Lucas's plans to study engineering. It was like I didn't exist. I tried to patch things up a few times. I'd suggest going out for lunch with just my dad, but somehow, Julia and the kids always ended up tagging along. If I ever brought up how I felt excluded, my dad would tell me I was too sensitive or that I was misinterpreting things. It felt like banging my head against a wall. The resentment built up slowly, but it really hit me when I looked back and realized how many promises my dad had broken. He used to tell me I was his priority, but his actions said otherwise. Julia had this way of making it clear that I wasn't really part of the family. One Christmas, I got a generic gift card while Lucas and Lily got these elaborate, personalized presents. I tried to brush it off, but it stung. Eventually, I stopped trying. Every interaction with my dad felt like a reminder that I was less important than Julia's kids. He didn't notice how distant I'd become, or if he did,